Hello there, and welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I am joined by Silver, aka Star Wars Thrifting, to discuss our experiences with and the legacy of the Phantom Menace in honor of its 25th anniversary. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Also, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost conversations. Hey everyone, welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations. I am so thrilled to get into these episodes about the Phantom Menace in honor of its 25th anniversary. Of course, we have the wonderful Silver, aka Star Wars Thrifting, to kick off our 3-episode adventure going through all of the legacy, the experiences that we've had over the years, and just really just having a great time celebrating this incredible movie that kicked off the Skywalker saga back in 1999. Now, I did pre-record these episodes because I'm doing a lot of life stuff, work stuff, all this stuff at the same time as the next couple of weeks unfold here. So in order to ensure that I give you all weekly episodes to look forward to, a lot of these, in fact, all of these, the next 4 are pre-recorded all the way up until the Acolyte. So that's a really fun, I think, a fun way to bridge this gap between now and the Acolyte. And because of that, I will not be able to do Cloud City Gossip during this time. So anything that kind of happens news-wise, I'll try my best to cover it all as the when we get to our next not pre-recorded episode in June. So that's kind of a heads up on that matter. But I got to tell you, the Phantom Menace is really doing well in the cinema. I saw that it was one of the highest re-releases ever for a movie. So I hope you got a chance to go see it in the theaters the way that it was intended to be seen. And then you can come and enjoy these conversations with your own experience going into it here, or perhaps it's your first time seeing the Phantom Menace, or it's your first time since 1999 seeing the movie again, or maybe you've seen it a billion times in between. Everything is fair game at this point. I'm very excited to have these conversations. So without further ado, let's get to our conversation with Silver about the Phantom Menace. Stay tuned. All right, everybody, welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations, and it's Phantom Menace time. We're here to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Episode 1, the first entry into the Skywalker saga, if you're looking at it from a chronological standpoint. And I am so thrilled to welcome our first guest in a series that we're doing here on the podcast to chat all things Phantom Menace, and of course, to break down this film in its entirety from various different angles. I am so thrilled to welcome back returning guests to the show, Star Wars Thrifting. Silver, welcome back. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be back. Love getting to have chats and conversations with you. But you know what? I'm excited to be talking about Phantom Menace because that's just been on the brain lately. So I cannot wait to get into this conversation. But I'm doing well.
Absolutely, Silver. Always glad to have you on the show. And you put out a call on Twitter that was like, "Invite me on your Phantom Menace podcast. I dare you." And I was like, "We're taking that challenge. We're gonna talk about this movie and have a great time." So that's the etymology of how we ride to this moment.
Yeah, I was double dogging I was like, I double dog everyone to invite me to talk about this movie that means so much to me. I dare you. Yeah, so thanks for accepting the challenge. You are
Of
brave
course.
because
You
I can
technically
talk about
always
this
have
all
an
day.
open door to come on this podcast whenever you want, but I'm
Thank
like
you, thank you.
this is like the perfect opportunity, knowing
Yeah,
like all the merchandise and
yeah.
everything that surrounds this movie. Like it's just the perfect storm for us to chat about.
This is my
Um
thing. This is it. This is why I'm put in the middle of this fandom is to talk about this movie as much as I can.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive into this here. So we're here to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace, and let's go back to the beginning. What are your first memories of watching this film?
Yeah, you know what? My first memories of watching this, I remember this so well. I was 10 years old when I watched this opening weekend with my dad. My dad is a big Star Wars fan. This is why I'm a Star Wars fan because of my
Mm,
dad. I was introduced to Star Wars at a very young age. Through the original trilogy and the special editions, and not just my dad, just I come from a big family. So even like my uncles, my aunts, my mom, like everyone just loves Star Wars. And, just it's really hard to say, I remember my first, when I first saw Star Wars. I don't. It's just always been
yeah.
part of my upbringing. Whether it's going to family parties or Christmas morning, there was always a original trilogy playing
Mm,
somewhere in the background. And that was just my like just earliest memories. But for this movie in particular, I was 10 years old. And I saw it in theaters opening weekend. My dad was just, I mean, even at a very young age, I felt the anticipation. I
yeah.
felt the anticipation for this movie. I mean, everywhere everybody was talking about this movie. I mean, it was all over the news. It was I remember even driving to past the movie theaters, people were camped out. I remember those
Oh,
things.
wow.
Like I just remember like just images of that. But I remember the excitement surrounding this movie. So I knew us going this weekend was a big deal. And this was something we were all looking forward to. My dad, he's a big movie guy, but my dad also likes to stay home, so he rarely cares about going to the movies. So for my dad to leave the house and go see a movie is a pretty big deal, and that's something I knew. Okay, this is
Mm,
pretty special. So I went opening weekend. I didn't go at midnight. I went I think the Saturday like probably like the 2 p.m. showing.
right.
So I went with my dad, but that was the second time my dad had watched the movie. He had already I think he went midnight with like my uncle. So he already did that. So he wanted to go see it again, and then my mom and my sisters, we all went. But I remember seeing it that Saturday, and it just completely blew my mind. And for the first time, I felt like I understood what Star Wars is all about, even though like
Mm,
it's been a part of, I mean, ever since I can remember. But this movie just, really, really spoke to me. And I was just captivated the entire time. The entire time. I mean, this was the movie that's just like shook me to the core. Like I walked out of that theater thinking like, "Oh my gosh, what did I just watch?"
yeah.
And that's for the first time, that's when I understood Star Wars. That's when I got it. I was like, "Okay, I get it. I understand." Um, and I remember, I mean, even like I knew it was like a prequel, and
Mm,
obviously, like you get hints of it. You're young. I was young, sitting there. I saw like the early beginnings of 3PO and like his wiring. I'm like, oh, this is the first time 3PO and R2D2 me. Okay, like I'm starting to put
mhm,
pieces together, and things like that, and kind of following along the story. I mean,
yeah.
again, I think I was just too overwhelmed being 10 years old. But
Well,
yeah, that's really what I can remember. But I feel like I really that's when I feel like, okay, this is actually this is Star Wars is really cool. And it's not because
yeah.
my dad's telling me it's cool. It's because, oh no, I understand it. It's actually really awesome.
Yeah, you made the choice that this is
Mhm.
cool rather than outside influences kind of telling you that you should like something.
Yeah.
And I love this story so much. First off, because your dad went to see it before everyone else, and then it was like a homebody himself to get him out twice. Like the stars were aligning here. Like
Big deal. Big deal.
it was
Yeah.
absolutely a big deal for him to do this,
Yeah.
from what it sounds like. So much respect in just all regards to that, and so cool that you get to have that family experience of it, where it's like it's kind of passed down generationally. But in a way, it sounds like this is I talk about with my wife on the Bad Batch when she comes on to do Bad Batch discussions. But she defines that as her Star Wars, right? Like that's the thing that got her really into just the subset of the galaxy that she's just like able to like connect to everything else a little bit more through. And it
Mhm.
sounds like the Phantom Menace was in many ways what you would define as perhaps your Star Wars, where you're
Mhm.
like, this is my origin story for Star Wars. This is where I really feel like I have ownership of these characters and
Mhm.
the events of this movie. And I'm going to defend it to my dying day against all
Yeah.
the haters and everything. Like, this is
100.
good Star Wars. This is valid. take
Yeah.
it or leave it. This is mine.
Yeah, that's how I felt, that's how I felt, and of course, like, with the other 2 full movies afterwards, I was just like a done deal. I mean, by Attack of the Clones, it was just, like, solidified, like, that's it, like, this is amazing, and by Revenge of the Sith, I was going by myself with my friends at midnight, skipping school
Yeah.
the last day to go watch the midnight showing of Revenge of the Sith. Like, this movie, like, changed changed the just changed everything for me. Like, this is I mean, here we are 25 years later, and I can't believe it, and it's still I mean, I still hold high regard for this movie. I have such I mean, such a soft spot. I mean,
Mm.
this movie just means so much to me. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy to even think about all this. I mean, what is time
Yeah.
anymore,
What
right?
is time?
Yeah, so it's pretty special. It's pretty special. And I'm glad I'm able to, be able to celebrate it years later. So
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I was 4 when this movie came out. So my memories are a bit more fuzzy
hmm
about seeing this
hmm
movie for the first time. I think some of my earliest memories of it are like just hints and glimpses of the movie
hmm
from the theater, and mostly just the stuff that terrified me. Like that was the stuff that just really stuck in my brain. That later on, years later, I was like, okay, this kind of makes sense a bit more as I'm piecing the story together. So really, the thing that stood out to me most is like Sidious in the first shots that you see of Sidious, where he's like, "I will make it legal." I'm like, ah, ah.
Even through a hologram, right?
I was like, "That's a bad guy.
That's a mean guy. Yeah.
He's not good. He's bad. This is scary."
Yeah.
um, and I just remember really love it. The Jar Jar was my thing. Like I was the right age for that.
Mhm, mhm.
The physical comedy of it all, and then obviously as the other 2 films came out, I just started to love more and more of this story and saga. And it was kind of interesting for me because I it was I will say, how do I word this? It's just like I kind of never connected the 2 trilogies until
Mhm.
like the 2004 DVD release. I always
Okay.
thought that they
Yeah.
were separate. Like I was like,
Yeah.
okay, that's different Star Wars, the Luke Skywalker stuff, and this is a whole new reboot.
Mhm. Yeah.
Until like somewhere around 2003, 2004, when my uncle was kind of like, that kid Anakin becomes the Darth Vader guy, right? And the other stuff. I was like, what? What do you
What?
mean? How's
What
that
do you
possible? Little
mean?
Annie? Little Annie?
Yeah.
I'm little Annie. I can't turn to the dark side. That's impossible.
Yeah.
So this is in many ways a journey for all of us here, and especially for me,
Yeah.
which took a lot of like not necessarily counseling, but like a lot of time just sitting there and being like, how does this connect? How is this possible?
Yeah.
And then of course Revenge of the Sith kind of ties it all together. But this is a great movie, and it's so hard to believe that it's been 25 years. I mean, just completely wild. It feels like it was only like last year that Celebration Chicago had the 20th anniversary panel,
Mhm.
which I've learned that you were at the panel itself for, which is so cool. So how have your feelings about the movie changed at all since that first viewing, or maybe not at all since you were super keen on it from the start?
Yeah, I mean, if anything's changed is that I love it even more,
You
and,
doubled down on it.
I've doubled down on it. Yeah, you know what, this movie, it's how my feelings have changed throughout the years. I've learned it's now become something of just nostalgia, and
Hmm.
I think nostalgia. I think why people enjoy nostalgia so much is because of how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
And this movie still makes me feel like a kid. I
Mm.
think most Star Wars stories do, but this movie in particular, I almost can. It takes me back to a time of my life that I'm so far separated from. I'm
Yeah.
now, an adult, married on my own. But I, for some reason, I always I just think about it just takes me back, just living with my parents and my mom and my sisters and my dad in our house and doing fun things on the weekend. Every time I watch this movie, just transports me back to a time like that. But throughout the years, I've learned to just appreciate it even more. I've
Hmm.
learned to appreciate, and I think what it has to do is just how like the fandom is just, I mean, the I feel like the prequel kids are just we're loud and we're proud, and I
Yes.
think that's just a fun place to be at, and I feel I'm just really thankful for it, and I feel like it's not, of course, silly me for think that I'm the only one that had these feelings when I was young. I mean, it's
Right.
impacted so many people, and I've learned to just be really appreciative of that. How a movie like this can just almost just like touch an entire generation of Star Wars fans. I mean, this was
Mhm.
just like the opening door for a lot of people. And yes, what's great about Star Wars, people can come at, you were just mentioning your wife, like how she said, it's Bad Batch is her thing. Like everyone just has different like entry points. And I think that's what makes
Absolutely.
Star Wars so accessible and special, because it can just, I mean, my cousin, the only reason he's a Star Wars fan is because the Lego video games back in like the 2000s. Like that's why he got into Star Wars. And I think it's just so special and unique that everyone can have that story. So I mean, if anything, I'm full of gratitude when I think about this movie. It's also allowed me to kind of really celebrate. I think because I want to say there was a time, and I think when I got older, I think when I it was post prequels, I
Mhm.
got a little older, and I think I started to hear like the backlash that this movie got, and how like people
Yeah.
were saying this movie isn't that good. And even to this day, I collect Star Wars Phantom Menace memorabilia stuff, and I'll have like some jerk at the at a flea market say those toys aren't even worth that much. That movie was lame. Like, we'll just say all these nasty things about it. So I've learned to just to be, if anything, I've learned, and I feel like as I grew up, I kind of would hear it and I'd be like, I would question myself, like, geez, like, was it that bad? Like, what
Hmm.
am I missing? But you know what? I've learned to kind of just like shut those feelings out, or like those voices
Yeah.
out, and just completely own it. So again, it's just nothing but gratitude to be like, you know what? No, I love this movie. Um, because of how it made me feel. And again, like I feel like the reason I'm even on this podcast talking about Star Wars,
Yeah.
and really just like embracing my fandom, is because of this movie. So I have nothing but gratitude about it. So I mean, again, double down. Great.
Double down indeed. And
Double down.
Silver, I love hearing that because like, you know, I'm glad that this film is an entryway for you, and I'm glad that it's only continued to be something of like a source of connection to a prior time in your life, a time of innocence, perhaps, where
Hmm.
life wasn't as hard as it is when you're an
Yeah.
adult and all that stuff. But it still, in a way, is that inspiration to be like, all right, it's a connector to a past time, but also you still live in the present. And you're like, all right, that's still in me. I'm ready to rock and roll. I
Hmm.
can take on the world. Anything's possible, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you know, I too experienced the immense, unfortunate backlash that people verbally. I don't know why people love to come at people that love the prequels for whatever reason. It's not like us
It's so
existing
strange,
hurts
right?
people,
I
right?
know. So strange.
um, like I would have I'd be, for example, like when Revenge of the Sith came out, I was 10, and I'd be at the store looking at toys at Kmart or something like that, and I'd have people just be like, "How you like that stuff? Huh, harumph! How dare you? You're not even a Star Wars fan." And I'd be like, "Oh, what do you mean I'm not a Star Wars? It says Star Wars on the box here. This is I like Star
Yeah.
Wars. It's here." And
Yeah.
I would be bullied by, and then of course, then eventually, like sadly filtered into a lot of the kids that I was friends with from like their parents. I think they were definitely influenced by them in many
I
ways, where they
Mhm.
were then told that they shouldn't like this stuff, and then I'd be bullied on like the playgrounds for wearing like an Anakin Skywalker T-shirt or something like that.
Yeah, I
And I had to
agree.
like change my. Like when people said I was a Star Wars fan, then it would be like, "Oh, do you like the originals or do you like the prequels?" And I was like, I'm a sagaist." It was like my way of like telling people that I really like the prequels a lot, but
Mhm.
without saying it to the point that they wouldn't then come at me with everything like, "Oh, how dare you like those? Those are
Yeah,
trash movies. They're so badly made. George Lucas ruined my childhood and all that stuff." I'm like,
yeah.
no, he made my childhood, so I
That's
don't. I don't
exactly, like, yeah, it's so silly when, people feel the need to, yeah, I mean, I'm clearly enjoying it, like, what's the point of even, like, having
Yeah, it's like
to
me enjoying it
make it.
doesn't take away from you
Yeah.
enjoying anything else, and the fact that the film exists doesn't take away that you can also like the other stuff that came out before.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was at and this really happened to me. I was at Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim. I was wearing a Jar Jar Binks shirt, right? Thought I was safe, I'm in
That should be the
the
safest place ever.
safest place ever, right? I remember getting in the elevator. Me and my husband were in the elevator. So a guy was in the elevator with us, and he looked at my shirt. He's all, "That's an interesting choice to be wearing a Jar Jar Binks shirt." I was like, I mean, completely just like, "Sir, it is 2022. We're still having
Yeah.
this discussion. Are you kidding me?" So, it was wild,
And you should be
crazy.
like, "Sir, it's an interesting choice for you to come here with that opinion."
Yeah, I don't remember what I said. I was like, I was so upset. I know I said something, but I was just like, "Oh my goodness," like, I just couldn't believe it, but you know
Yeah,
what?
you're like, "First off, 6 feet away from me, COVID is still a thing. You can
Yeah,
just
please.
keep keep your trash opinions
Yeah,
over
I
there."
I know. They should I don't think you're even allowed in this place. Yeah, it was just so bizarre. It really caught me off guard, but you know what? Again, I ended up having a great time that day with my Jar Jar shirts and that one opinion as opposed to the 40 compliments I got on this Jar Jar shirt. It was just like, you know what? More of us, more of us.
There exactly.
Yeah,
There are more of us, exactly,
more of
to quote
us.
Rise of Skywalker.
Yep.
And in this film too, especially like as we get more information, and I loved it as a kid, but as I'm able to like understand the process of filmmaking, right? We chatted. We both watched the beginning before this, and we watched the 20th anniversary panel. This film, and that's not even hyperbole, changed cinema. Like this
Mhm.
is a threshold, seminal moment in the art of making movies. So like whether people like it or not, this movie, we don't have movies today the way that they exist if it isn't for George Lucas putting pen to paper and saying this is the Phantom Menace.
Mhm.
And I love when he in the beginning, right? They have like basically like the producer sitting at this like table, um, hashing out budgets and all that stuff. But I just love all the behind the scenes stuff, by the way.
Oh, same.
And George is basically telling Doug Chang, or maybe this was the 20th anniversary panel or something like that. But just confusing all that stuff at the same time. Where he's basically like, everything that you thought about Star Wars, just like throw that out the window. This is
Mhm.
completely new. Check your expectations at the door. Start fresh, because we're reinventing what is Star Wars. And I'm like, that's a
Mhm.
great viewpoint and opinion to just have in general for anything. So I like to take that into anything they do these days. Like if I'm going into a new movie, or maybe I'm seeing a sequel or a trilogy or something like that, I'm like, I'm gonna let the people wow me. Like I'm
Yeah,
here to be thrilled. I'm here to see the story that's presented. Check my expectations at the door. I'm here to have a great
exactly.
time.
Yeah. I think that's how anyone should be, walking to movie. It's fun to speculate and want to like be like you got to speculate responsibly as to what you think
Exactly.
it's going to look like and should like. But, like if you just if you just check your expectation at the door, actually sit down, enjoy the movie for what, the story is trying to tell you. I mean, you'll have a great time.
Exactly.
And yeah, for sure. That's the great thing about and that's what I love about listening, watching the beginning documentary, even like, we're talking about the panel from, Chicago, um, seeing all like the filmmakers and the creatives behind it and how just like, they were just it was just all brand new territory for them.
Yeah.
And, and that's probably that's just one of the special things about this movie. I mean, just the new, um and just like the just groundbreaking stuff they were able to achieve with this movie is just, I mean, it should be just celebrated every year.
Every
I
year, exactly. 26th
personally.
anniversary,
26th
27th. We're
anniversary, let's
coming.
do it.
So speaking of the new, this movie, by nature of being the first in this Skywalker saga now, introduced a plethora of new and interesting characters into the Star Wars universe. So we've got Padme Amidala, Jar Jar Binks, Qui-Gon Jinn, Darth Maul, Shmi Skywalker, and these are just a few of the many. Rick Ali, right? which which of these new characters are standouts for you, and why?
Oh man, I feel like almost every character is a standout for me. Even like the earlier versions of them, even like the early version of Obi-Wan, the early version of
Oh man.
3PO, all of them stand out for me. Um Well, let's see. For me personally, I've mentioned this plenty of times. I think Qui-Gon is my just my favorite Jedi of all time.
Oh, yeah.
Um I Qui-Gon just always stood. I mean, Liam Neeson is just a great actor, but he just this presence that he brought was just like very
Oh.
like, oh, this is just what a Jedi looks, how talks and everything. And I just remember being really captivated with Qui-Gon from the bat. I mean, just the bat. Obviously, he was just like Obi-Wan was his apprentice, and they were you obviously knew he was like the one calling Qui-Gon was the one calling the
Mhm.
shots, but there was just something so wise, and he was just very he just stood out to me at a very young age. I just remember that, and I just
Yeah.
since then just been fascinated with Jedi ever since. And I think it's just like his presence about being a Jedi. And just that really Qui-Gon really stuck out to me. Padme Amidala is my favorite character of the prequels. And I think for me personally, how why I gravitated towards Padme was because I was 10 when I saw this movie. Padme, I knew was young, not my age, maybe just a few years younger, and she was a queen running things, and I just thought, wow,
Yeah.
that is really cool. And then towards the end of the movie, she's over there, taking back her planet, going against the Senate, having a voice for herself. And I thought, for me, like being a 10-year-old girl in a movie theater, that was really powerful. And I think that's
Yeah.
just how I mean, all the girls who saw Leia in for the first time,
Mm.
I understood that. I'm like, wow, like this is a great character. And I think this was a character that just really just like spoke to me personally. And to this day, I just love so hard, wholeheartedly. I'm just gonna mention all as much characters because I have a lot to
Please
say
keep
about
going.
some of them. Jar Jar, I mean, I talked about having a Jar Jar Binks shirt. Jar Jar Binks is a in the beginning documentary. Um, George Lucas says Jar Jar is the key to all this. Well, one, because he is. We got to make
Hey,
this digital
he is
character
the key.
work, but also it's for the kids. I was a kid when I saw this movie. Jar Jar Binks was
Love
for
Jar
me.
Jar.
I thought he was so silly. I thought he was funny. It's like almost like you almost follow along Jar Jar's journey through it all.
Yeah. Yep.
Especially like the circumstance he was just thrown into the middle of everything. So you're kind of as a kid following along Jar Jar. That's how, like, for me, that's how I took it. It was Jar Jar and Anakin. Those are the characters that I was just like I put myself
Mhm.
in most of the time. And Jar Jar was really funny and he was enjoyable. And like, like Ahmed Best's like physical performance was just really like silly and like great. And even then, like in the playground, like the kid, we would all quote Jar Jar Binks. Like we would say, like, yeah, how rude. Like we would
Still
just
do
like
to this
say,
day.
yeah, still to this day. But I think Jar Jar Binks is just a great character. And again, I think George Lucas really said it was for the kids. I was at Rancho Obi-Wan. I'm a volunteer there, and I was talking to
Yes.
Steve Sansweet about Jar Jar, and he said, "Well, you know why George Lucas made Jar Jar, right?" And I said, "Why?" He's like, "It was for his son. His son was really young, and he would like point at like trucks and go ja ja, like just say like." Try to say truck, but it would come out as ja ja. So George Lucas wanted a fun
Oh,
character for
wow.
his son. That was coming from Steve Sansweet, who probably knows some stuff, and I was
He's in
just
the
like,
know.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I know, yeah. So I was like, oh, that's a fun little tidbit, but it makes sense. George Lucas, being a dad, wanted to, we still
Yeah.
want to talk to kids. So I think Jar Jar Binks was a great addition to this movie. And Darth Maul was just scary and intriguing as he should be. So I mean, Darth Maul needed to do what he needed to do. He was terrifying, and I feel like every boy in my school was Darth Maul for Halloween. It was crazy. Like those the
Yeah.
I feel like there's always like during Halloween, there's always the one costume that all the kids are wearing, and Darth Maul definitely in or I want to say, yeah, 1999 to 2000. That was the year all the kids were dressed up as Darth Maul. So a lot of great characters. I can keep going, but those are the ones I'm just gonna really touch base on.
Then throw in Mr.
Boss
Exposition, Rick
Nass. We
Ali.
gotta talk about Watto. We gotta talk about. They're
Watto.
all great. Watto, Sabulba.
My
They're all
man Weasel and
yeah.
Wald.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a great thing about this movie. They're we go to different locations, so it's just like room for just so many great
Yes.
characters to be introduced. I just made a post yesterday saying that I can't wait to see TC-14 on the big screen. TC-14 is the
That's right.
protocol droid in the beginning of the movie
Oh, excuse
who's
me.
just stuck in the middle, just trying to, just trying to be the perfect host. And next thing you know, there's caught in the middle between battle droids and Jedi. So I think just yeah, this movie is just really fun. Just a bunch of characters coming from all over the place.
I mean, a whole other new thing too that you just noted there is the droids, right? The
Yeah.
B1 battle droids,
Oh, those
the
B1 battle droids.
droidicas. Um,
Yes. So
I'm like, I
good.
remember being a kid and being 5, 6, 7 when the droidicas. I was like, how in the world are these Jedi gonna escape?
Yeah.
They have shields. How could they
Like
defeat them?
like roly poly droids. That's incredible. Yeah. It's just really just a lot of great characters. But yeah.
I'm yes anding everything that you just dished there because these every character you just named there are awesome in their own way, right? We could literally do an episode just about any one of them. Frankly, a full hour-long episode detailing our thoughts, feelings, the characters, canon, history, legends, history, all that fun stuff. I love what you said about Qui-Gon, right? This character that exudes patience and understanding,
Yeah.
and uh, especially being a kid, the way he just interacts with Anakin, right, is like
Mhm.
exactly how
Yeah.
like you would want a parental figure to be
Yeah.
interacting with you. That is isn't even your parent, right? Like,
Yeah.
but like it's any interaction that you have with a person that's um a wise older figure, right? You hope that they have the patience and kindness. I
Mhm.
love the scene in the beginning, right after the whole TC-14 sequence, and they take out a couple of the droids, and uh, Qui-Gon then uses the lightsaber to break through the shields or the blast doors, kind of, and he's just like, it's impossible to get in through, and he's like, he's still coming through, and then it just shows
Yeah.
Qui-Gon just pushing through. I'm like, anything is possible at this moment. I
Mhm.
feel it every time the music swells,
Mhm.
the goosebumps start popping up on my body. I'm like, oh man, I wish I can be a Jedi. I can do this. Everything is possible.
Yeah.
Um, I love all that stuff. I think one of my favorite characters in this movie and just in Star Wars in general will be Shmi Skywalker.
Oh, yeah.
Vernilla August is a portrayal of this single mother who's also a slave. um,
Mhm.
she's just so heartwarming, right? The way that
Mhm.
she is so understanding of the situation, trying to give her kid the best life that he can, understanding that he is special in these different ways, not hindering his abilities or any way, his
Mhm.
curiosity, encouraging it in a way.
Mhm.
The strength that and the courage that this character must have had in order to actually say like, go away, go become a
Yeah.
Jedi, learn, see if this is something for you. Like, I don't know if a lot of parents would have that strength or courage to do that. And for her to realize that this is better for her son than just living here and living like a slave, like, I mean, all the power to her in that moment. Like, I'm sure a lot of probably single parents like my mom at the time probably related to her, but it's like, as I relate to Anakin, I also can empathize with her that same regards
Yeah.
in that manner.
Absolutely.
Um, and Maul, I mean, is there a cooler character reveal in the
I
history
know.
of cinema and the trailer itself? And just taking off the hood, the Duel of Fate swells in the background, the twin bladed lightsaber. I mean, this man is literally an incarnate of the devil. We talk about in the beginning, the things that were in my brain were the things that scared the living daylights out of me. And you can rest assured, Maul was in some nightmare fuel stuff for me when I
Yeah.
was 4. um, so that's all great. And of course, all the power in the world to Ahmad Best in his portrayal as Jar Jar Binks. A character that's for everybody, certainly intended for children. I love that tidbit there. I'm going to use that for the rest of my life now about the Jar Jar story. That's awesome. You're
Mhm.
breaking news on this podcast here, Silver, with those tidbits there.
I know. Steve Sansweet told me, and I'm sharing the news. He didn't just tell me like it was like a group of us because I was asking about this piece of Jar Jar, and he was just like, "Oh, well, this is why he named." I was like, "Oh, okay, that's kind of cool." But yeah, for
Absolutely.
his son Jet was really like a toddler and was really into trucks, but he couldn't say trucks, so he kept saying Ja Ja.
Jar
So
Jar.
yeah,
That's how my niece says Jar Jar right
yeah,
now too.
yeah.
We bought a Jar Jar stuffed doll, kind of, the Galaxy's Edge, like in universe dolls that they sell there at
Yeah,
that
like the
too.
little plush, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. When she was born, we bought her one as her like
Nice.
stuffed animal that she would have. So like all throughout, she just turned 2. So she always travels with Jar Jar. So he always keeps her safe and protected, which I'm always
Yep.
like, yes. Not only are we indoctrinating her young in the right ways of the Force,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
she's
Jar Jar.
also like creating this connection to a wonderful
Yeah.
character that only
Yeah.
continues to be uh, more popular, I think, in people's minds as time goes on.
Yeah, Jar Jar is a great travel buddy too.
Certainly is.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Anakin here. One of the big reveals of this movie, I think, and from opinions that I've heard over the years, and perhaps you have as well, the Anakin story showcased within this, his origin, is somewhat divisive among people. So, what do you make of just Anakin's portrayal in this movie, as well as how the origin plays out?
I think what people had a problem is like they were just not anticipating the big Darth Vader to like be this sweet young boy, but it's like
Hmm.
I mean, I think that's what makes the story more interesting, and I think that's the cautionary tale George Lucas was trying to say.
Yeah.
Tell that, hey, good-hearted people can become dictators of the galaxy, and want to, yeah. So I I thought Anakin's portrayal was fine just because I was Anakin's age, so it made
Yeah.
sense for me. That's just how us kids act. We're curious. I think he just wanted to just do good and try and help. I think that's, a lesson to be learned in this movie. And I think as far as his origin, it just, it made sense for me. I like the fact that it mirrored Luke a little bit, coming from
Hmm.
Tatooine and, just really good at mechanics. I thought I liked those little, those little parallels between, his son later out throughout the years. But um I mean, I thought his portrayal was fine. And I think I think I could see why like fans would just be like, or like, especially you're coming from the original trilogy, it's just like, oh, this kid's annoying and well, he's being a kid. I mean, like, that's how kids act. So um I understand what George Lucas was trying to say with this portrayal of Anakin. And like for me, it makes the most sense.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, and again here, where it's like we've already talked about this a little bit, where it's just like check your expectations at the door, right?
Hmm.
um, George was absolutely making a point here, like you said, like people don't become like they aren't born bad.
Hmm.
People learn this stuff, and this isn't just like an inherent thing that people have within them. These are taught, these are learned behaviors. You just don't become a fascist generally overnight. Or in some cases, maybe you do. But you aren't born just a general horrible dictator fascist person.
Hmm.
um, I actually really like the subversion of the expectation here when it comes to this. Um, and again, to your point, like a 10-year-old is going to be inquisitive, annoying to some degree, right? Luke at 19 is also much of these
Yes,
things too. So, like,
absolutely.
I think people I don't know what they were thinking when they were like, I'm going to let that pass for the 19-year-old. And because I was 10 years old in 1977 when watching it. And now now I'm much older in my mid to late 20s here watching this
Mhm.
kid. And like, now I'm putting my own insecurities and feelings onto this and projecting onto that, which
Yeah.
again is probably not the right way to go about this. Um, I think Jake Lloyd's portrayal is really well done. It's exactly what George wanted. If you watch the beginning documentary, where
Mhm.
it's like
Mhm.
that's exactly what they were going for, is exactly what Jake put on screen here. And it's just really a shame. Like we talk about Ahmed Best facing incredible hate and criticism over the years for the work that they put into this. Jake Lloyd's another horrible example, and I'm glad that we got an article a month or two ago
Oh, yeah,
that
recently by,
he's
Clayton
doing better.
Sandell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's doing better.
Mhm.
He's
Mhm.
enjoying Star Wars. He's kind of come to terms with everything that's going on. I hope that much like Ahmad Best, that there's an opportunity for him to come back into the fray again in some way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
So always hope that that's a possibility. I actually really like some of the other aspects of. I don't know if I like. Let's just say I don't know if I like it, but I think it's a very interesting thing too of the Immaculate Birth uh, surrounding him, like creating this interesting way of like, oh, and then it introduced the Chosen One prophecy, another way to connect this saga overall. Just adding more mythology and lore to the Star Wars galaxy is always a good thing, in my opinion, and something that needs to be done if you're going to expand 3 more movies into this story and make it important as a connective tissue piece. Like, that's something that needs to be there. And then the other interesting thing is him being a slave. Like, that obviously plays into not only why his mother has to stay there, but I think there are some lingering impacts of that when he's a Jedi, right? Family is very important. Um, uh, just we from what we've learned in history as a historical standpoint, that anger and frustration and all that other stuff can also play into people that were once former slaves that are now trying to face everything else. Everything's new, everything's overwhelming, right? There's going to
Mhm.
be some shock and awe when it comes to like transitioning into different life. So all that stuff comes into play here, which I think, to George's credit, is a good way to subvert the expectation rather than just having Luke 2.0 come into play here.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
no, agreed.
John Williams,
Oh.
end of sentence there. Uh, but John Williams provides an really elegant special sauce of music for this movie. So, how do you think that John Williams handled the enormous task of creating a new musical foundation for this film, which obviously also set off a new trilogy of films as that foundation, too?
I know. I think about John Williams, and John Williams, has to have, like, that task that George must have felt, and, like,
Yeah.
you know, how okay, how am I gonna do this? Like, Star Wars, they're coming back to Star Wars, years later. How am I going to make it feel like Star Wars, but also, like, putting, like, my own, like, new
Yeah.
spin.
Make it
Also,
new.
we're telling brand new stories. So how am I gonna do this? I don't for one I mean, John Williams is a genius, so, maybe it
Hmm.
just came natural to him, which that's something I don't doubt. But I think John Williams handled the task, I mean, just as well as anyone. I mean, no doubt in my mind, like, he was the one for the task and for the job, because this movie, or the music in this movie, um it just sounds like Star Wars. I mean, when you watch it, and then I again, I wish
Yeah.
I can compare, because I just wasn't so familiar with, like, the original trilogy, where I watched this movie
Hmm.
where I could be like, oh, okay, this feels like Star Wars. But there's just certain themes in this movie that just still stand out. And obviously, we talk about Duel of the Fates. That is just I mean, top tier
Yes.
Star Wars music. But then I look at, like, the other, like, transitional music in the throughout the movie, and, like, the different tones. I think about, for example, I think about, like, even like, Jar Jar's theme is very whimsical and
Yeah.
silly. It just reminds me of, like, the Ewok music a little bit.
Mm,
Um,
good
and
stuff.
Anakin's theme is very, like, hopeful, youthful, very playful also.
Hmm.
But then there's hints of the Imperial March at the end of that thought at
Oh,
that song.
delicious.
And John Williams is just, like, telling the story of, and just, like, giving hints, right? Um, but also just, like, the flag parade on, as you're going to the Bunta Eve, like very like just like, we're at a
Yes.
parade, we're about to hit a race, and like, you just hear the horns, and it's so so good. And I think John Williams just did a great job. And like we talked about, like this is the foundation of like more movies that are heading into, we have two more movies after that. You have to kind of lay this foundation. And I mean, just Duel of the Fates is just I I mean, I'm stunned. I can't even like every time I think about it, it's just so good. And it's just like the impending doom and how everything is just hanging on the balance, the future. I mean, you get like that dread already early on of like everything is just relying on this duel right here.
Yes.
This battle between Jedi and Darth Maul. Like this is just everything is just the galaxy depends on the outcome of this
Mm.
fight, and you feel that whether it's the orchestra. And I remember when we were talking about the documentary, and I remember when they were filming the sequence, and John Williams asked like, is the choir vocals, is that too much, should we just not play it? And George Lucas said no, absolutely not, like we need that choir needs to be in this. um because George even said, he's like, I want this to play later on in the third film, like talking about Revenge of the Sith, like
Yeah.
this, I want this to be a callback. And we see that later on with Sidious and Yoda. But it's yeah, I mean, it's so good. I think one of my favorite songs or piece of music from this is the end, the celebratory when they're on
Oh, it's
Naboo,
so
and it's
good.
just like it's so good. They played all every time you go to Celebration, every time the panel's over or they're about to start a panel, this song in particular is just like blasting, and it's just a really I think John Williams just did a great job because again, it just feels so much like it just sounds like Star Wars, but like in a completely different
Yeah.
own take. And I feel like you're just transported every time there's a piece of music. Okay, we're dealing with the B1 battle droids because the droid invasion theme is on. Okay, so you're hearing that, or just even when like the Naboo, like when they show like the beginning, like the Naboo palace when the droid invasion, like it's just it plays it just like all these different themes throughout the movie. It's just really really good. I love it.
Yeah. It's
I love
it's
this
it's
entire so good, John Williams. Thank you. You did a
John
great job.
Williams.
To answer for my entire
Yes.
run on answer to this question. I think John Williams handled the task tremendously. No
Here,
notes.
here. Here, here.
No
Good job,
notes.
John. Let's just say if he only did this one score in his entire life, I think he's still in the conversation of being best composer for film scores ever. Like
Yeah.
this is I can't not think of Star Wars and not for a lot of people it's probably some of the original trilogy stuff, but for me this is prequel stuff that comes into mind first, right? It's
Oh
that
yeah.
I can hear the B1 battle droid, that thumping bass and brass stuff that they got
Hmm.
going on when that's going on. I it is funny that you mentioned that, like literally every time a celebration panel ends, or when they like if you're watching the live stream, they cut to something
Yeah.
else. They do play what's what Augie's Municipal Band or
August.
something.
Yep. That's
Um,
played.
but what it's also so brilliant at the same time is that it's the Emperor's theme just in a major key.
Isn't that wild?
So John Williams was playing chess with us while the rest of us were just sitting there going, "That was a fun popcorn flick."
Yeah. I
He was
love when John
laying
yeah.
the seeds there and also telling us that like nobody won here at the end of the day, right? It may
Yeah.
seem like Naboo got their planet back, they're living in symbiosis with the Gungans now, but really it was just one guy orchestrating a lot of death in order to springboard himself to being chancellor.
Yeah.
And playing
It's
every side and manipulating everything, and it's just him at the end going, "Yep, I did it."
I did it. This is where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in the front of the stage because I knew like, yeah, I'm behind it all.
So it's brilliant. And again, same deal. Anakin's theme. We're
Mhm.
talking a man that's playing the long game.
Mhm.
This is a man. He's throwing in there the major pieces of the Imperial March there.
Yeah, like towards the it's so good. It's just like
And in the end
It's
credits too, you then get the Vader like the movie ends with Vader's vocal
yeah,
tonation, which was
it's
excellent.
so good.
Um, so last year when I was still living in DC, I was very fortunate to go see um, a program with the National Symphony Orchestra where they played at least one track from every Star Wars film with the orchestra, and I was like, oh, I bet they'll probably do Duel of the Fates for a modified version for Duel of the Fates for the Phantom Menace, and no, they come out with the Flag Parade, and I was like, yes, subvert my expectations, I'll take it.
Yes. Leave them at the door. You're gonna get the flag parade instead. The
I was
flag
like,
parade
this
is just
is
as great.
amazing. Let's
We're about to
go.
get
I'm
yeah.
seated.
You're the flag parade, and then you're about to get some pod race engines roaring right now.
Oh, I was like, let's cut this concert now. I'm going home to watch the Phantom Menace. We're ready to
Yeah.
rock. Uh, and of course, the Duel of the Fates. Were you fortunate enough to get into the Lucasfilm Showcase panel at 2022 Celebration,
Yes, is that the one? Oh my gosh, yeah, when Anakin
where
and,
they started
Obi-Wan.
with where they
Yeah.
started with the Duel
I
of the Fates
almost
chorus?
I don't remember. I felt like I jumped out of my seat so fast that I felt my feet were planted on the floor, but I felt that I was, like, falling forward. Like, there was
You
no
were
way. I mean,
ascending
I
into
was.
the Star
That's
Wars heavens.
I think that's what it was. I was actually ascending. That was incredible. That was a special moment. That was fun. And even then, like, even when the Obi-Wan trailer came out and that Duel of the Fates opened, I mean, that
Yeah,
just like, oh, no matter where you go. But yes, I was there for that. I was there for that showcase, and that shook everyone to their core. That was just, I mean, they had the whole choir on the ground too.
whole
Like, just
choir.
like, it was just too good.
They were showing that video, and then they cut to black, and then they started playing, and I was just like, "What are
Yeah.
we in for? What are
What
we
is this? Is
doing?
too much. Is this how we're starting? There's no way. It's too early in the morning for this.
This is too good, guys. We
It's
gotta
too
stop."
good. Yeah, yeah. Good luck trying to, up those panels now, because that was just too good to open up like
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
how can you guys top this?
it was perfect. It was just too it was perfect. It was perfect.
So, I mean, Duel of the Fates, it in many ways is the glue of the prequel trilogy.
It
It
is. Mhm.
it appears at arguably the most important seminal moments of these three films. Of course, and then you mentioned Revenge of the Sith, Attack of the Clones. It's there where Anakin goes to the Tusken Raider camp, and then makes that horrendous choice that he does. Um, and let's just say this movie comes out in 1999, so there are some things that like date this movie a little bit too, right? There's a music video, a very popular music video that accompanies Duel of the Fates that is played regularly on Total Request Live on
Yeah.
MTV, which I don't think
Yeah.
they even have Total Request Live anymore on
No, they
MTV.
do
I haven't
not.
checked it
No,
out in
but
many years.
it's a big deal. TRL was a huge deal for,
It
my
was.
teenage self, rushing home after school to watch music videos. But um when this music video debuted, I actually, crazy enough, I actually have a VHS of all of someone who recorded this episode of TRL. So I
For
have the
real.
whole yeah, so I have the whole NTV special of Phantom Menace, and this music video debuted. It was on number one. It was by the way, after that, it was on number one. Like, it was
Yeah.
like number one for like a few weeks afterwards. But I remember this music video debuted. They had this big old like Star Wars Mania episode of TRL, and it's really funny to place this music video amongst NSYNC, Britney
Yeah.
Spears videos playing
Backstreet Boys, all that. Yeah.
Enrique Iglesias, I think, Limp Bizkit was
Oh,
in the
now we're
countdown
talking.
also. So it's really, really interesting. Actually, it's MTV covering the prequels is just a whole nother a Pandora's box of just crazy promos that happen because um Yeah, I did a podcast episode with Force Time, and we were just covering a lot of like the MTV covering like Star Wars, and it's really really funny. But you know, it makes sense. You got to go after you got to go. The
You
older
gotta go where the
fans were
people
gonna
are. That's
they're
right.
yeah they're gonna come to this movie no matter what. We gotta get the young crowd in this movie and get them invested and promote the heck out of this movie. But yeah, so Duel of the Fates being on TRL is actually just it's just a fun little treat that exists in the world, and I'm so thankful for that.
I mean, that's the equivalent of today, like advertising on TikTok, right?
Oh
You're going to
yeah.
meet the people where they're at, and that's where
Hmm.
for our generation, a lot of people got they were tuned in every day after school. You know,
Yeah.
3:30, 3:30, 4 o'clock. Carson
Yep.
Daly's on. You check it out. You see what's new in the music video world. And Silver, I think you have a holy grail right there amidst all the other holy grails that you've got in your collection. That VHS tape is that's
It's a
some mint
pretty
mint stuff there.
it's a pretty cool VHS tape. I'll pop it in, and it's just one. It's just even like the commercials. It's
It's a
just all
time
of 99.
capsule. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a big time capsule. But they were even covering like the fans who were going to Toys R Us and buying the toys, and they were doing some coverage at Skywalker Ranch because there was tons of celebrities who were going to go watch the premiere at Skywalker Ranch. Like, I mean, there's pictures of Paul Rudd and Ryan
Oh,
Reynolds
I saw those
there.
pictures today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those pictures are hilarious, right? You have 98 degrees, just chilling there. It's like really, really funny. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting thing that I have in my collection, but it like you said, it's a time capsule, and it's really fun to revisit when I can.
Oh, what great gem that is. We have YouTube that we can just like
I
digitally have
love
this
it.
stuff. It's like
Oh
George
yeah,
George Lucas is like thank like he didn't envision it, but he's like one day there will be a place where all this can exist for people to just have willy
just
nilly.
easy. Yeah, easy for us to access. Thank you, George.
And that one day we can learn that in some South American countries they included beer commercials. And
I just bought myself a Cerveza Cristal shirt. On I think it was on eBay. It's just some shirt that says it, and I'm like, I need to have this shirt. This shirt's just too good. I actually I think I want to buy like, I do want to buy like the beer. I'll have a 6 pack just for like in my collection. Like this is important, y'all. This is a big deal.
now it's like I don't know if they did it for films beyond the original trilogy, but I hope that there's like some Phantom Menace version out there in the universe. And I've been trying to wrap my brain around where would they have put these like advertisements within this movie.
It's so funny. Oh
And
my
like my
goodness.
brain goes to the end there where Padme kind of goes to the seat, like the chair,
Oh
when
yeah,
they
that's a good
and
one.
pulls it out there instead of getting a gun. The one the blaster
Yeah.
is there.
Yeah.
Surveys
Yeah.
like,
That's a good one. That's actually a great one. That's a good one. I'm trying to think of a few. That's a good one. That's definitely a good one for sure. Or when Jar or they're sitting at the table and Jar Jar like sticks his tongue and grabs the fruit, and it's just he just
he
grabs the
grabs
beer
the surveys.
instead. Yeah.
Oh, the hidden gems of the universe that we never knew.
Yeah, that's the best.
Oh, wow. So speaking of other hidden gems, this movie's got a ton of incredible action sequences. We've got the pod
Mhm.
race, we got the duel with Maul, I love the opening fight sequence. We kind of talked about that a little bit here, and that's just a few of them.
Yeah.
So, what action sequences really stand out for you when you think of this movie?
The entire the third act, everything.
The
There's
movie.
not Yeah, no, the third act, when they're storming the palace, and then they enter, they find Maul, and then that's when Duel of the Fates starts, right? And you're just like, okay, and then Qui-Gon's like, we're gonna handle this, and then Padme's like, all right, we're taking the long way, and then she
All
takes
right,
all
I'll go
her,
that way.
yeah, and then Anakin, getting in an N1 fighter, and just again mirroring what Luke did at the end of New Hope. Like George Lucas said, this poetry, it rhymes, right? So those three sequences with the backdrop of Duel of the Fates is just so
Oh,
exciting. It's probably the best part of the movie. There's
mm.
not one part where I'm just like, okay, cut, let's go to the other scene. I want to know what's going on. I am just I just want, I am just hooked in, by, all the action sequences of that specific act. I love seeing the handmaidens and like the royal guards, like just, they're just again, they're just taking back their palace back, and it's just so fun to watch.
Oh, so good.
And then of course, like just the amazing choreography that those lightsabers are just doing. I mean, for me, it was really hard for me as a kid to watch the original trilogy and those
Yeah.
lightsaber fights, and then I get it, I'm sorry, y'all. I love the original trilogy and their lightsaber fights. I understand, like, there's a lot of emotional weight with it, but
Oh,
man,
I
these
mean,
guys are just going
he's
at
doing
it.
backflips. Come on now.
Ray Park and Liam Neeson and Qui-Gon, and then and Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor, and I'm sure like all the stunt doubles involved,
Hmm.
and Nick Gillard, who is the choreographer, like, the stunt choreographer, like, orchestrating all this, is just so good. And those lightsabers just, man, they're just wailing each other with them, and it's just so, it's definitely my favorite. But yeah, and I just love yeah, there's, and then even like then you see the N1 fighters, like just like this whole like spaceship
Yeah.
battle, and you just hear like just like the humming, the roar of the N1s are just, it's really good. Everything. Oh my gosh, this whole entire movie is so good. Oh
I'm
wait,
like,
and duh, even like the whole battle, there's a whole battle with the Gungans and the droids. Duh, there's four things going on. I'm sorry, not three. There's four things going on, and it's really fun. And yeah, those I like in the documentary, of the beginning documentary, when he's talking to Dennis Mirren, right? And Dennis Mirren, a legend at ILM, asking George, like, okay, so this ball, the Gungans, it's gonna catapult. Like, what do you want it to do? Like, and George is like, yeah, I just wanted it to be like a big water balloon, like of goo, and just
just
like
figure it out.
that's real. That's exactly what it was. It was just like this big old these water balloons of goo that that hit the B1 droids. Are It's really fun, but I just think it's just like a really good third act with having like these four sequences going at it and paced really well. So
Exactly.
a great job on the editing, because um yeah, pretty a lot going on, but I mean, I feel like it kind of goes seamlessly.
Absolutely. I think it's just the third act is just perfect if you ask me. Right. It's
Hmm.
like as soon as one like almost gets close to overstaying its welcome, then it moves to the other one, and
Oh
then it
yeah.
moves to the other one, and then it moves to the other one. So
Hmm.
you're never actually bored the entire time.
Not at
You're just
all.
like
Hmm.
it's like Star Tours, right? They found the right amount of time
Hmm.
before you would get motion sickness.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, not to the next one.
And they're like, all right, well, so we're gonna switch this one now. Okay, we need to check in on what the pilots are doing here, and
Yeah.
then we're gonna check in on what they're doing here, and they're taking back the Theed Palace, and here's we got to check in on Qui-Gon just died. Sorry
Oh
guys.
yeah.
You're like, oh, everything's kind of nothing's getting forward here. Oh, now Anakin's gonna blow up the whole what the Naboo, not the Naboo, but the Trade Federation's ship.
Yeah.
It's just so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
I mean, I may put on the Phantom Menace after we're talking here because like
Mm,
it's just one of those movies that as soon as you talk about it and you're just like having a great time just chatting about the film overall, you're just like, man, it's so good. I need to rewatch it again, even though
I
I just watched it
know.
yesterday in
Yeah.
preparation for this.
I know.
Um,
I'm trying to not to watch it. I'm gonna try and wait until May 3rd. But waiting a whole month not watching this movie is really, really
it's
a big
brutal.
deal. It's a big deal for me, because I'm constant I this movie's on at least twice a week in my house.
Oh,
It's like
brilliant.
it's my comfy movie. It's my comfy.
And just to give some love to the pod race, right? That's
So good.
we're talking about some like the glimpses, right? And this is the one non-scary like thing that I remember from this movie from my first viewing of it, and I'm like, oh, this is so fun. This is just I want to be in that. And then of course, you have the I believe the game, the actually
Mhm.
like arcade racer that was
Yeah.
at it was at my movie theater. So every time I go there, I'd be like, all right, I'm playing the pod race game, so now I actually
Yeah.
can feel like I'm Anakin. And then to
Mhm.
have my heart broken years later to be like that little kid becomes that big mean guy.
Big mean guy.
So good, and it's like that the prequel fight choreography. They just set a new bar for
It
like,
did.
but it makes sense story-wise too, because these are supposed to be
Yeah.
the Jedi at their height. They are the physical specimens of peak. They're peacekeepers in the galaxy, right? They have to
Yeah.
meet all the challenges that are available out there in the galaxy, right? Whether it's Nile or Drenger, right? Whatever it was at the time that was
Yeah.
leading up to this, they had to be ready
Yeah.
for it.
And,
And now that the
yeah.
Sith are back, they have to have these ultimate martial arts sequences against them.
Exactly, and you have a young Sith who has not lost his limbs yet, so he can,
Not
he
yet.
can not yet. He will. I don't know what's up with these Siths
It's
losing their limbs, but,
He'll come
he's
back though.
not.
Don't worry
Yeah,
about it.
yeah, 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 it makes sense for it, and, yeah, you bring up a great point. This is I mean, there's Jedi everywhere, and of course, it's not like, "Well, I've never used this lightsaber," where it's not it's I mean, yeah, it makes sense for the time period that it falls on. Um, but man, it's so good.
It's so
Those I
good.
mean, those lightsaber. I mean, I remember like at a young like me and my cousins, we would try and imitate the the sequences with our plastic lightsabers. Like we would watch it and then we would try and like, okay, it was like a dance, right? We would try and like learn this dance
It's
so we
beautiful.
can
Yeah.
so we can so we can look really cool and do it real fast afterwards. Yeah, it's
And all the bruises that you got from the misses of the
yeah,
of those
the
plastic
misses of those little
lightsabers.
plastic lightsabers, then they hurt. Hit your thumb off.
That's why my friend and I learned the entire Anakin Obi-Wan choreography
Oh,
um, for
cool.
Revenge of the
Mhm.
Sith, but we used Nerf baseball
Yeah,
bats, which were a
yeah.
lot easier on the body.
Perfect. That makes sense. Yeah.
So we've talked at length about this film already, and some of the things that I really love about this film, just in general, are just like the themes that we can take away from our from it to impact our daily lives on this. So, asking you candidly here, what are some of the themes that you think this film presents that we can incorporate into our everyday lives? Then,
I think working together is a big theme in this movie.
oh, I love that one. That's
Yeah,
great.
that's a you know, in for example, you have the Jedi. Well, when they rescue the queen, and they go and they take her to Coruscant. You already sense tension, right? There's tension between,
Hmm.
okay, no, like the queen is the one that calls the shots here. All right. But it's like, okay, but the Jedi are like, well, you guys, this is kind of our territory. We're the one calling the shots. But you kind of see like, okay, they kind of have to like compromise and work together.
Yeah,
Um, Also, um, you see that with just the Gungans and and the people in the Naboo, like when Padme goes and like pleads with the Gungans, and like you already hear the history. The Boss Nass says, well, we don't care about the Naboo, like they think they're better than us, like we stay here in our kingdom, which is below water. I don't care what goes up front, that's their problem. But then I that you get that great moment between Padme and Jar Jar when they meet each other for the first time, and you kind of
yeah,
see like I mean we don't know that she's a queen yet, but she's a handmaid, and she's kind of like, oh, you're a Gungan, like how are you here with us? Like there's you're already getting hints of their kind of like their history. And Jar Jar just being like the great character that he is, he does, he almost is just like
yeah,
he just has a helping hand, like he wants to help. He just sees the good, so he's gonna try and help. I mean, he's just minding his own business. One day, next thing you know, he's part of this adventure that goes on. So you already know the history between the Gungans and the people in Naboo, and how. But that scene where she goes, I mean, they have no, they have to go, and like she's practically pleading with Boss Nass, and like they come to understanding, like, okay, we got to fight together in order to regain our planet back, because like Obi-Wan says, we form a symbiont circle.
yeah.
We really need to work together. So I think working together is a big theme for me that always stands out in this movie, and that's probably just, I think, definitely one of my favorite scenes is when they're all, when they go to the Gungans and they ask for help. And again, like I'm sure, like the Trade Federation, they didn't know that they had a Gungan army just coming out of the water, like and how that was able to play out. So I yeah, I think working together is a theme that I always feel like that's always my takeaway. You
Absolutely.
may not understand the people, or you may not understand another person and where they're coming from,
Yeah.
but I think what we all want at the end is for like the greater good of, our home, where, what we're, or just, humankind and, life. We really need to come together, even if we're at opposite sides, in order to make a difference. So I think, yeah, coming together is a big one.
That is wonderful, and that's something that I always take away from this film too. I think we should start being friends, right? I love that sequence. I love the humility of Padme to be like, "We're here to ask for your help. You are a grand like a grand people, a grand army. We can live together. We can work together in this time." Like it's so brilliant, especially the way that Padme plays the political aspect of it too, at the same time. And it's just again that's such a wonderful aspect of this movie. Again, people working together, right? The Jedi working together with the Naboo, with the Gungans, with slaves on Tatooine, right? Just seeing
Yeah.
what could possibly come and embracing the moment, and that's something that I always take from this movie is like be present in the moment. Like
Hmm.
it's okay. Like that Qui-Gon says, be mindful of the living force. That's kind of the first sentences. That is,
Yeah.
Obi-Wan is literally like, my mind's elsewhere. It's on something else. It's elusive. And he's like, oh, think about the here and now, right? How
Yeah.
many times could we, as people, are we always thinking about, all right, we're thinking 5 steps ahead. We're reflecting on the past and we're like not living actually in the moment. Um, and that's something that I always kind of take away from this movie is to like, okay, how can I be more present now? How can I just enjoy today?
Hmm.
And not be stressed about too much about the things that are going around me, and just focus on the here and now, and make the best that I can of the situation. And the last thing that I always take away from this movie too is just the I don't know if it's necessarily a theme, but it's just like the feelings that I get from Qui-Gon, where it's like patience is such a
Hmm.
powerful thing. The patience of Qui-Gon is something that I always like think is a standout of the character and his character traits.
Yeah.
Like literally when the world is collapsing around him, he's fighting the Sith Lord. He is trapped in this space. The Sith Lord's on the other side. His Padawan is however many leagues away from him, and he just sits down. He lays down. He meditates. He just calms himself. He quiets his mind. He's like, he's okay with whatever happens next. He's at peace. He's like, I'm here. Whatever happens, happens. And I'm like, man, if I can do that, I'll be a much better person. Like that's the thing that Star Wars is supposed to be. Like George Lucas is like, Star Wars is a film for 12-year-olds and a 12-year-old in all of us, that we get to see what people do on a daily basis or in this universe, and we get to see how they make mistakes, learn from mistakes, and we can in a safe way see them do that so that we can take inspiration from that and then use that in our daily lives. And just Qui-Gon literally being like, what happens is going to happen. What can I do to prevent that in this moment? I'm just going to calm myself. I'm going to just react as it happens, and I'm okay with it. And that's something that I personally always try to incorporate into what I do at work, at home, personally, with friendships, all that stuff. I'm like, what can I control and what can I control, and try to let go of it.
Yeah. That's actually my favorite shot in Star Wars. There's I
Really?
that shot. There's a frame, and you see it from Obi-Wan. You see it from Obi-Wan's point of view. So you see Obi-Wan looking straight ahead. Sorry, my cat decided to jump
That's
on the
okay.
mic, which is great. So you see, so the frame is you see Obi-Wan. It's from Obi-Wan's point. You see Obi-Wan looking forward. Obviously, he looks like like anxious, and then Qui-Gon is kneeling down, and then you see Maul from the other side looking at Qui-Gon just like with this like hunger.
Yeah.
And I think that's my favorite. That's just like my favorite frame, my favorite shot of those three with the barriers, and they're all reacting differently.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I think yeah, the way, and I love what you said about like Qui-Gon, like, being patient and, just taking kind of whatever comes. And I think all of us can kind of use that, be more
Yeah,
patient,
really.
um, and be a little bit like more like Qui-Gon for sure. But yeah, I really enjoyed what you said.
I'm so thrilled to hear that like that shot too is like one of your favorites in all of Star Wars. Like for that to
So
stand
good.
out amongst all 9 films of the Skywalker
Mhm.
saga plus the Star Wars stories. I mean, the Phantom Menace reigns forever.
Always.
Long live the Phantom Menace.
Yes.
So before we get to our last question here, Silver, your Star Wars thrifting, I wanted to chat with you about merchandise. And there was a lot that was released in support of this movie and, of course, in time since. So, what are some of the cool things in your collection that are Phantom Menace related? And are there any artifacts that you're still looking for out in the wild that you perhaps haven't found yet?
Yeah, well, it's really hard to talk about my favorite things in the collection. I think we mentioned the arcade, that's a big one. I think
Yes.
everyone really, when they think about my collection, they think about Phantom Menace, just because, I've shared just how personal that movie means to me. And that's
Hmm.
just stuff that I just like to kind of go after. Um, so I'm not gonna tell you about the cool thing that I found in that I have. I'm gonna tell you about the recent one that I found,
All
and I
right.
have it with me. It's this Jar Jar
Oh,
Binks.
yes.
It's like this sticky tongue, and it's Walkers. It was like this potato chips in like the UK or something, and you're able to get this Jar Jar Binks toy. And this Jar Jar Binks has a sticky tongue, so you're able to like those sticky hand little things that you
Yes,
like when the vending
absolutely.
machine. I think that's kind of like similar to what it was, but it's his tongue. It's
Oh my
disgusting.
gosh.
There's an alarming amount of Jar Jar Binks' tongue merchandise that came out.
It really was.
So yeah, but I'm glad I have this in my collection. So this is something that is one of the cool things.
That's
The
awesome.
most recent, but it just kind of just shows like the silliness that
Yes.
the merchandise that came out that year. I mean, they just capitalized on almost everything. But yeah, this is a pretty good one for sure.
Absolutely, and nothing was too precious when it came to
Yeah,
Star. I mean, Star Wars
yeah.
in general has never been too precious with the IP itself in terms of
Mhm.
what can we merchandise it.
Yeah.
Um, but the Phantom Menace too, like you're right, there was a considerable amount of Jar Jar tongue stuff. It's like they saw the sequence there at the dinner table and him
Yeah.
getting his tongue stuck in the pod race, the pod energy
Yeah.
lightning thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
losing control of his
Yeah.
king. Like they knew like
Yeah.
this was gonna be a hit.
Yeah, we gotta sell Jar Jar Binks tongue stuff. Yeah, so that's a funny thing. That's a recent thing that I got. As far as like things that I'm still looking for, um, I would like this there's this life-size Watto, and it was like a Pepsi display product. It's a Watto and he's life-size. I mean, just like he looks just like a life-size
I think I've
Watto.
seen it.
And
Yes.
yeah, but the thing is, what's cool about him, he's on this like pole thing and he kind of hangs. So he's like 10 feet like hanging, and looks like he's like flying, or just hanging out, floating, whatever. I would like that in my collection, just because I like to think that my collection is a big Watto's like workshop, and I would love to have just a Watto just kind of in the middle of it all. I think that would just be great. So that's something I would like to find out in the wild. That's something I look forward to every time I go to the flea market. I'm like, is this the day? Am I gonna find the Watto? But again, we talk about leaving your expectations at the door. I'm just gonna enjoy whatever comes my way. Um, but if I were to have one wish, it would be that Watto.
Wow. First off, I love that you're kind of thinking of your collection workshop as like Watto's
Junkyard.
den
Yeah.
of antiquities, let's call it. I don't want to call it a
It's
junkyard,
yeah,
but
what's yeah, it's kind of it's starting to look that it looks kind of has like that feel to it. Um and yeah, so I would love to have Watto, and I can just like dress him up.
yes,
I
yes,
would
put
just
a
put
little Santa
hat
hat on him
the
and all
cool
that.
yeah, I put a Santa hat on him. I put I have a Burger King I have a crown from Burger King from Revenge of the Sith. I'd let him wear it.
Oh, I remember those
I would
very
just
well.
yeah, I would just kind of like dress him up. He would just be like the 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 one watching over the place. I would love that.
I think that's brilliant. I think that's brilliant. And uh I saw the in the Jar Jar that you have. It's still in the packaging. But if you ever decide to take it out of the packaging, it'd be a fun bit to have the tongue connected to a Cerveza crystal.
Oh, yeah, that'd be good. That actually would be good if I could just, like, stage it that way, right?
Yes. And of course, we talked about this on your previous episode that you were on, but you also did get the one of the crown jewels being the Phantom Menace Pepsi dispenser.
Yeah, I can't believe first of all, I can't believe they even had that in 1999 just, like, out in public. That's so crazy how you're able to
Brilliant.
go.
Yeah.
I mean, they would have them in schools too, it's so wild.
It was
Yeah,
a different time.
yeah, I have the Pepsi machine in my garage. It's actually one of my most, like, prized possessions. Steve Sansweet from Rancho Obi-Wan always gives me a hard time. He's just like, "I can't believe you have that machine and you got it." Yeah, because I picked it up actually right next to his I snuck it past where the rancho is, the next town over, and was able to find it and then like bring it back home. So I snuck it past. They
Oh,
went-
do they not have one in their collection?
they don't have it doesn't have one in his collection.
For
So
real? Oh,
yeah,
you pulled a fast one on them.
I pulled a fast one on Steve Sansweet, and he jokes around, gives me a hard time, but so it's a great piece to have. We talk about time capsules and you know, I look at this machine is just it's from 25 years ago, and it's just a reminder of just how the marketing, the
Mhm.
anticipation, the excitement surrounding this movie, just how monumental it was. And every time I see this machine, I'm just like, wow,
It
what
it
a
it
time.
it really was a different time. I mean, just
Yeah.
alone, I imagine you can probably see, like, the different sodas that they have on the thing, and the logos are all different
The
now.
logos are all different. It's so funny. I'm like, wow, that Dr. Pepper logo design. There's a
There's, like, Mountain Dew
Fruitopia.
probably too and all that, yeah.
There's like a Fruitopia. Do you remember that drink
I don't even
Fruitopia?
know what Fruitopia is, and I drink a lot of
Fruitopia was
soda.
it was like this juice. It wasn't soda, but it was soda, but it was just like just juice, I guess. But
Oh,
it's
interesting.
comfort. Yeah, it's Fruitopia, but
Was it
it's
like
a lot of
Pepsi's version of Fanta?
I think so. I think so, but
Yeah.
it's such an old drink. It doesn't exist anymore, but it's really funny.
It was so cool, like, rewatching the beginning because you could see, especially in the Tunisia sequences, they had, like, all the umbrellas were sponsored by Pepsi.
I know.
Like, they were planting the seeds for these, Coke, for these, soda machines.
Pepsi is just I it's just another character of the Phantom Menace for sure.
It certainly is, as always.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. It's like going transporting yourself back to 1999 in Silver's
It's
garage.
it's honestly I think that's really what I want to feel like. I talked at the top of the show just how this movie makes me feel like I'm a kid, and I think that's how I displayed my garage. I feel like
Yeah.
I wanted to feel like if I was a kid in 1999 and I was a big Star Wars fan, how would my space look like? And that's kind of really what I have. I think the Phantom Menace really I don't just collect Phantom Menace stuff, but I do like to have like those are like the standouts throughout the
Yeah.
collection, throughout the
Yeah.
garage. So
You you
it's
you have a soft spot. You're focusing on without
yeah.
intentionally going for it. You're like, "Hey, it's Phantom Menace stuff." You like
I yeah, so
catches your eye.
I wanted to feel like a prequels kid, like Dream Clubhouse or something, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
music to my
I
ears. Music to my ears.
I just connected. I have a couple of like the CRT TVs,
Yes.
so I like a 9-inch and a 13-inch, and then I have like a big 24-inch, and I just connected the N64 out there. Um,
Yes.
so I have one TV that plays the N64, so obviously you can play like the Battle for Naboo and then obviously
The
the
Battle
racer
Naboo
game.
going and yeah.
Yeah, racer game, and then I have like a smaller CRT TV for the Super Nintendo that plays like Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. So I kind of just have like little yeah, I just wanted to feel like a little like a kids clubhouse for sure.
Oh man, and I love Episode 1 Racer too. The
Oh yeah.
N64 game. That was
The best.
many hours. Many
Yeah.
hours
Many
spent.
hours, right?
Many hours well spent, let me just say
Yep.
that. So, Silver, we're at our last question here. How do you think the Phantom Menace continues to inspire and affect new Star Wars stories as we go into the future?
Well, I mean, this movie was the beginning, right? So it's going to be really interesting now that we're getting a new Star Wars show, The Acolyte. That's going to be like the
Yes.
prequel to these prequels, which is going to be just so I'm just looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to going even like back in time. So I'm sure like with the Phantom Menace being at the forefront of their mind,
Oh yeah.
how that's going to come into play. We're watching the Bad Batch and we're talking about M counts, midichlorian counts that were
Oh,
introduced in the Phantom
midichlorians,
Menace.
love them.
Finally, yes. Um, so I feel like it's always gonna affect new Star Wars that comes. Again, like this was the beginning of the saga. There's a lot that took place, with the introduction of, you know, Palpatine and just like the Sith in general, and just like seeing like how hubris the Jedi were, and that's
Hmm.
why I'm really excited about the Acolyte, to see how we get to that point. Um, but I think what Phantom Menace really does inspire, um, new Star Wars in general. And we talked about the beginning of the documentary, how we got the behind the scenes of just the groundbreaking, always pushing for new technology. How can we tell
Hmm.
these stories and how can we do it better? I think it's just the heart of it. I think it's the heart, not just Star Wars. Obviously, it's the geniuses at ILM and like what George Lucas, how what he
Yeah,
created, but if it wasn't for like all the groundbreaking stuff that happened in the Phantom Menace, I do not see how we would even have the volume that exists
you
in
don't.
yeah. So or just, the fact that we have like motion captured now, and it's just so many different things that this movie was able to just like change, just like not only just cinema, just like how people just tell stories in general. We have the Phantom Menace to thank for that, and I
Yeah,
think it's going to always continue to inspire and affect all new Star Wars. I mean, we're starting to hear about, Star Wars creators who are, like our age, like
yeah.
I'm sure these movies played a big part in their upbringing, and um that's just gonna it's just gonna continue on, and I think that's what's really exciting and about it.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what the next generation of Star Wars storytellers do, first
Yeah.
off,
Hmm.
and just how, whether intangibly or tangibly, the Phantom Menace is Easter egged in many ways in the stories that they're producing. Leslie Headland, the showrunner for The Acolyte, has been very clear that she loves the Phantom Menace, and this is definitely an era of Star Wars storytelling that she wanted to explore because it was important and impactful and pivotal to her upbringing. I think she was in high school at the time that they released. Um, so now that she's leading a whole new show in the Star Wars galaxy, she was like, "That's what I want to do," which is so cool and exciting. And um, now we're seeing these characters come back in the fray. Ahmad Best is literally the Kelleran Beck, the Jedi that saves Grogu, probably the most important character that Star Wars has created in the last 5 years.
Hmm.
Um, it
Yeah.
this movie continues to just uh, revolutionize the way that films are made and represented and produced these days. Um, I think it was a definitely a they didn't have to make more Star Wars movies. Let's just say that. Like if they would have just left the three original trilogy untouched, it would have been fine, right? People love Star Wars. It would be just this talked about as like the Lord of the Rings and Back to the Future and all that stuff. But George was
Hmm.
like, no, I have more to tell. So it's like
Yeah.
it encourages people to be bold with their storytelling and to take risks and to it did not just settle with what they think is good and all that stuff, which I think is very much a George thing in general. So I think that's going to continue to push stories even beyond Star Wars. And for fans, we continue to rewatch these movies and grow our love and support for them. And you go to conventions, and aside from those bad eggs that come up to us still that are like, oh, you like that? Like, no,
Hmm.
we love it, and
Yeah.
you see people cosplaying as these characters and still showcasing their love. And as these actors come out on stage for celebratory panels, they get standing ovations. Um, and it's the last thing that I want to say too is like I don't know if you saw this gentleman at Celebration Anaheim in 2022, but there was a guy that was cosplaying as Qui-Gon
With the
on
umbrella?
Tunisia with the umbrella.
Yeah.
So
So
I'm like,
good.
the Phantom Menace lives, and it lives on through this guy.
I have a buddy who made the Jar Jar 3D print helmet, the one that Ahmed Best
No
wears.
way.
Yeah, and he's working on doing the skin too. But he's for his May well, he's gonna meet Ahmed Best on on May 4th. Ahmed Best is doing like a signing and meet and greet on May 4th in Pasadena.
Oh
And
my
he's
gosh.
he's planning on showing up with the Jar Jar Binks mocap outfit.
No
And
notes.
it's like,
Perfect.
that's awesome. That's cool.
I
That's
hope that
cool.
makes their day, and I hope it makes Ahmed's day. I
Yeah,
hope everyone just loves it. That
it's
sounds
pretty cool.
incredible.
But how awesome, like the fact that like, like how cool, like we're even like celebrating just like the awesome behind the scenes stuff. Like, yeah, I did see that Qui-Gon. I took a picture of that Qui-Gon because that Qui-Gon was just like for me, just like I know
It
exactly who you are.
it's like our generation's pink shorts guy from the
Yeah,
X-Men.
yes. 100%. Yes, yes. Pink shorts. Yep.
I'm like, "Wow,
Oh,
we didn't even get to the whole crossover too where ET's in this movie."
oh, I know. My
There's just
goodness.
there's so much goodness in The Phantom Menace, and it's a
Yeah,
delight to have you on, Silver, to chat about this movie at great length and in great detail because this
yeah.
movie deserves it, and it's been so important to both of us. So thank you first and foremost for coming on and for chatting about your memories and experiences and the legacy of this movie. Silver, where can the folks find you online if they want to continue the conversation or just to geek out about the Phantom Menace too?
Well, thanks so much for having me again. This was such a joy. I enjoy coming on your show and getting to chat with you. So this has been just quite lovely. So I'm so appreciative. So thank you so much. But yeah, you guys can find me at Star Wars Thrifting. I'm on Instagram and X. I think that's what we're calling it now.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. And that's yeah, so you can find me Star Wars Thrifting. I'm pretty active and love my DMs are always open if you ever want to like chat and talk about anything, Star Wars or Phantom Menace. I'm all open. So yeah, you can find me there.
Well, perfect. So Silver is a wonderful follow on all the social channels. You can keep up with all of her thrift adventures, and hopefully one day that Watto comes into the collection. And
Yes.
I'll be looking every weekend. I hope that you find it. I'm manifesting it. It's got to happen.
Everyone manifest for me, please. That'd be
Yes,
great.
put it into the ether. It's gonna happen.
Yes.
So, folks, thank you at home for listening to this episode. Of course, we'll be back next week with more Phantom Menace goodness coming your way. So be on the lookout for that in your podcast feeds. And of course, if you want to continue the conversation, we are Force Ghost Conversations. You can find us on all social media platforms: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Hive. Just search for the podcast name Force Ghost Conversations and you'll find us there. And until then, may the Force be with you. Take care.